We often talk about lawyers and understanding finance, but really often many professionals could do or have a better job at understanding finance because everything they do is contributing to the revenue and the expenses and the profitability of a business.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of On Record PR. I'm your host, Gina Rubel. Today I'm going on record with William M. Washington III, the Global Chief Financial Officer for Baker McKenzie. As CFO, he is responsible for the firm's financial operations, which total more than $3 billion in revenue across 76 offices in 45 countries. William, welcome to the show. Before I start, I want to give you a special shout out to your global chair, Milton Chang, who I had dinner with last week in California.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure he's happy to have you on the team. And I'm sure you have a lot of great information to share with our listeners. So if you're ready, why don't we get down to business?
That sounds great. I'm glad to be here.
And thank you for your time. So at this conference last week, one of the things we talked a lot about was what managing partners, CFOs, and CEOs wished law schools would teach lawyers as it relates to law firm finance. So I'm really curious how you would answer that question. What do you wish lawyers knew before they started the practice of law?
You know, that's a great question. And we often talk about lawyers and understanding finance, but really often many professionals could do or have a better job at understanding finance because everything they do is contributing to the revenue and the expenses and the profitability of a business. However, I do believe we want our lawyers focusing on practicing law and serving their clients. And so my biggest thing is let's give them the basics, let them understand what they do on a day-to-day basis and how it contributes to the firm's overall profitability. And even more importantly, help them to understand why profitability in a law firm is important. And so often when I'm speaking to partners, I do a lot of profitability sessions, a lot of finance sessions. I start with a simple story. I tell them about my two parents who started their own law practice in Washington, D.C. and worked for 10 years and eventually went out of business as a law firm. And I tell that story almost as a funny anecdote. But I'd say, in the legal industry, because we are a cash business and we have to generate revenue and profits on a yearly basis and then do it all again the next year, it's really important what we do in order to drive towards those profitable results. So if they can just understand the basics of rates times hours equals their revenue, that their costs are generated both by our people cost, which is our primary resource. So in a factory, your cost may be the cost of manufacturing. In the legal industry, the cost of our people is our most valuable resource. And we have to figure out the difference between investments that we make in our people and just the day-to-day running the business. So I think simple revenue minus expenses equals our net income, and our net income pays our partners is really the foundational concept that most lawyers need to learn.
I really appreciate that. As someone who practiced law, I had a corporate communications degree before that, which is why I do what I do today.
Yeah.
But we didn't learn about profitability. We didn't learn about law firm business structure. And so it's such an important thing to understand, especially for associates who want to be on the path to partnership, but don't understand what that really means. So I really appreciate that. And I know that at Baker McKenzie, you are doing that and you are training your people, which makes them so much more valuable.
Yeah.
And I don't mean from a billable perspective, by the way.
Yeah, and I learned that concept. My early career was spent at Accenture, or at the time it was Anderson Consulting. And they used to do something very unique on their projects. Before someone would get promoted from manager to partner, they would put that senior manager in the position of leading the finance team for a full year prior to making partner. So by the time they became a partner or owner of the company, they had spent a year looking at the financials on a monthly basis and understanding the drivers of profitability. And I think that slow, kind of methodical, built-in education system really helped to make them better partners. And they went into day one of partnership understanding the basics of the financials. So when I do my profitability training in the past, I know they always try to educate partners, but I really start at the associate level, in particular, the senior associate level. And I try to bring them along that gradual learning curve of understanding the basics of the business. And then I give it to the partners and to the senior partners as well. But I do think you want to catch them earlier in their career so they know why they even want to be a partner in a law firm and what it means to be an owner of the business.
You just gave me a great idea, crazy idea, but I think everyone who wants to do that should have to chair some sort of committee in a firm with a budget and have to learn how to do budget entries, budget analysis. Could you imagine? Anyway, I digress. So what has been the most rewarding aspect of your career as CFO?
Well, one of the things is I have a dream job, right? This is a beautiful firm to work for. You know, being a CFO of Baker McKenzie and being responsible for 1,300 finance professionals, a law firm with over 13,000 employees, working, like you said earlier, in 45 different countries. You know, it really gives me the right balance of utilizing everything that I've learned to date, as well as being able to make an impact across a wide array of varying challenges that we face. And I think just the ability to face different challenges each and every day. You know, one day I may be thinking about, you know, the political landscape in North America that everyone thinks dominates the world. But then tomorrow I may be working with our office in Bangkok on a challenge with a client that we have that we're trying to make sure that we find the right arrangement in order to serve that client better. And then the next day I may be dealing with something in Lima, Peru, or Buenos Aires, Argentina, where the currency is fluctuating on a monthly or daily basis sometimes, and how that impacts our business and our operations, and how do we best serve our clients in a high inflationary environment. And all those challenges, which I couldn't have dreamed of even having the answers to when I was early in my career, I really have taken progressive steps in my career to help me to be comfortable making the uncomfortable decisions. And so I find it to be a dream job. It's like pulling together a lot of different puzzle pieces all at one time and really getting to the end of the year and seeing how things turned out.
I love that you share that global perspective because you are a global firm. And again, at that conference that I attended last week, they had 4 economists. And they weren't, you know, we tend to be very U.S. centric here as U.S. citizens, but they were talking about the economy in Japan, for example, and what's happening with the yen and what will happen if China invades Taiwan and what happened as a result of Russia invading Ukraine and how that affected finances globally and so many other issues that I don't want to get into today. But it's really important that we understand, and you know, we lawyers, because we practice in a certain area or industry, we tend to have a very myopic view, but there's so much more to understand. And I think that's one of the things I really took away from talking to all these global managing partners and CEOs and heads of firms, is that there's so much more than just running a business. Right? There's so much to it, and it's pretty complex. So I can imagine we could talk for hours about all those challenges, but it's nice to know that you enjoy them. That's what I love about what I do as well.
I think you brought up all the challenges that are sitting on my plate today. Mm-hmm. And earlier I said it's important that there's someone, a business professional, that they're looking at those challenges so that the lawyers can focus on serving the client and the practice of law. So a litigator can't be in a courtroom arguing a case, or, you know, a transactional lawyer can't be helping their clients deal with difficult transactional issues if they also have to worry about the yen and the status of the yen, or, like you said, China invading Taiwan or Russia, Ukraine. And those are the business challenges that business professionals can really help to mitigate. You know, I have someone on my team working with me every day on the currency fluctuations in the 45 countries in which we operate. You know, we have someone working with us on the business operational risk for us to be able to respond quickly if something happened to our office in Taiwan, which would also impact the fact that we have offices in China. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we had business in Russia and business in Ukraine, and we were one of the longest serving law firms in those regions, and we had to figure out how to disassociate ourselves while also still continuing to serve our clients, while also continuing to serve our people. These are our people, our partners in Russia. These are our partners in Ukraine, and they aren't on the war front. And so we had to deal with all those challenges. And there's a cost to it, right? Getting our people out of Ukraine to safety, cost us money that we weren't expecting to spend, while we're also losing business from those clients that we're no longer able to serve because they've been sanctioned. So that revenues decline and those expenses are increasing. Don't worry. CFOs on the job, we're going to figure out a way to still get us to the end of the year and continue to be able to do what we do.
It's so interesting, your perspective, because when I spoke at the conference last week, and it was about how managing partners and executive committees make decisions on some of these global political and social crises and whether or not they should speak out about it. And those were exactly the topics we talked about. And they're so complex because one of the things we do here at Gina Rubel is we do a lot of crisis work with global companies. And so it was just very interesting to hear it from both my perspective, the attendees' perspective as the decision making, but now your perspective in terms of how you have to look at it financially and what the cost is. And there's so many people who just rush to judgment, and especially now what we're seeing with Israel and Gaza. And they're saying, well, you have to do this, but they don't understand all of the aspects that go into a global firm, the need for it to remain neutral and to care about the safety and well-being of its people in those various countries and regions, but then also the financial impact and how much a firm has to invest to keep its people safe. So, and you said it, it's our people.
Yeah, and law firms are very unique. Like I said earlier, we're a cash business, and we have to be able to compensate our partners who are on the books and on record today in 2024. So it's really hard for us to make long-term investments or spend long-term money or pool money because we distribute it all at the end of the year. So if something happens suddenly, we don't have millions of dollars on reserve to deal with every humanitarian or geopolitical issue that may come up, because it may impact the partners in 2024. And then we have partners in 2025, 2026, or down the road who are benefiting from something that someone else was burdened with today. And look, these are big problems or small problems in the major scheme of things, but they're big problems when you have to be a going concern. You have to make sure we have money to pay our rent, to pay our people so that they can take care of their families, so that we can serve our clients and we can continue to be Baker McKenzie. And I keep it very simple here. I always tell partners, this is the only time I'll ever be the CFO of Baker McKenzie. This is the only time Milton will ever be the CEO, and on and on and on. This is the only time collectively we'll be the people guiding this organization. And a firm like Baker McKenzie that has been rising up ever since two lawyers got in a taxi cab and said they wanted to be the first global firm, and they've been rising up for 75 years. I don't necessarily want to be the CFO who's the CFO when over the 5 years, 10 years, everything went down, 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 down. We just want to continue the great legacy of the work that was started by those two partners in that taxi cab 75 years ago. And as a matter of fact, this is our 75th anniversary. So we wanted to be a year that we can celebrate and continue to build and do great things. And one thing I like about Baker McKenzie is we are not neutral. We do take a position on the things that fit with our culture and our values. We're very careful because we do have people who sit sometimes in competing regions or competing locations, but we are not neutral, and we live that out in everything we do and say.
Well, first of all, happy 75th anniversary to everyone at Baker McKenzie. That's very exciting. And I did not know that it started in taxi cabs. So I love that. William, we're going to pause here for a quick message from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Okay, great.
This episode is sponsored by Furia Rubel Communications. In the ever-changing business ecosystem, it's crucial for law firms and businesses to maintain a focus on innovation, differentiation, and efficiency to sustain their relevance and competitive edge. Furia Rubel's Stride Services equips domestic and international law firms and businesses to pinpoint obstacles and inefficiencies, distinguish true unique selling propositions, optimize processes, and adjust to shifting client requirements. To learn more about Furia Rubel's Stride Services, visit furiarubel.com/stride.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking to William Washington III at Baker McKenzie. He's the CFO. So my next question for you is, what trends are you seeing in the industry and how do they impact your business and your audience, which is huge?
Well, I think you touched on part of it earlier. We're facing elections in over 70% of the regions in which we operate. So geopolitical challenges and the geopolitical landscape, which is not limited, like we said earlier, to North America. Elections are happening in every country that impacts our clients, impacts our business, and we have to be prepared to serve our clients and to respond to those geopolitical risks. While at the same time, the demand for legal services, which has ebbed and flowed in different ways during the COVID crisis, continues to be strong. People are still looking for the best lawyers to serve them on their most important matters. And I tell everyone that Baker McKenzie is not just a big law firm. We do over almost 10 million hours of service for our clients every year. And I say that's 10 million times people pick up the phone and say, we need your expertise to help us to solve our problems. And that's been consistent over our most recent history, but even over our 75-year history. Other biggest thing that's going to be big in the industry, of course, is the introduction of AI and the changes that may make on the types of services clients seek out their lawyers for. So I think there will be some shifts in the way that we go to market. Clients will be able to self-serve for some things, and our young associates will have to get up the curve on the more complicated issues and matters more quickly than they've had to do in the past.
I agree wholeheartedly. So I'm going to switch gears for a moment, and I want to ask you, because you mentioned leadership, what is your leadership approach and style?
So I told you earlier that I spent my early part of my career at Accenture. And one of the things I learned at Accenture was they were really good at empowering young leaders very early in their career. So at Accenture, I rose quickly from being an analyst to a specialist to a manager to leading teams to leading the finance function in the DC area. And what I learned through that is you really do need teams. You need teams to understand the strategy and the vision for the group so that everyone can row in the same direction. And if even one person on the team isn't rowing with the team, it just makes the job and the work that much harder. So I'm really big on empowering teams and empowering leaders to help to get the work done and pushing that down, not just from me to my direct reports, but having my direct reports push that down to their direct reports. And I believe when you get 1,300 finance people rowing together in the same direction, many hands make for light work is how the term's been put to me. And so I'm really big on having a team-based approach, having an open door policy. I think it's unique to be the global CFO of such a large organization. But I think what's even more special is when I'm able to touch not just the senior leaders in our firm, but also that person who just started their first day and working anywhere and letting them know that they can reach out to me for career advice, for advice on the industry, for advice as it relates to finance. I'm not that great at spreadsheets and stuff anymore. It's been a while since I've done the day-to-day, but I still have a couple of tricks up my sleeve and can help out the young person.
Yeah, well, you don't need to be great at spreadsheets anymore. You just ask Gen AI to give you the algorithms and the formulas, and you're all set.
Absolutely.
So before we close out, because I really want to be mindful of your time, what advice would you give to finance professionals aspiring to become a global CFO?
So there's a few things that I would say. I think people often talk about authenticity and being able to bring your whole self to work. And I find that to be extremely important. When I go to speak to young students, which I do all the time, and I look across a room of 300 and 400 students in those auditorium style universities, what I see is a room full of potential. And each of the people in those rooms will one day land somewhere. And I tell them, we need all of you. We need all of your talents, all of your skills, all of your background, whether you come from the poorest area of town to the most exclusive area of town. You each bring something unique to the table, and that's what makes us a team. That's what makes us a well-functioning team. And so I really encourage people to be authentic and to be true to themselves. And I try to lead with authenticity so that I set the example for them. The other thing I generally say is, continue to sharpen the saw. Steve Covey wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a couple concepts in there. Begin with the end in mind. If you really do see yourself one day being a CFO, then you need to continue to sharpen the saw, which is another term he uses, which is continuing to educate yourself. For me, I have multiple degrees. I have an undergrad degree. I have an MBA. I have a master's in law firm management. I have certificates in Lean Six Sigma. But for someone else, it might not be multiple degrees. It may be educating themselves in AI or other technologies. It may be educating themselves on the legal industry or whatever industry they may be performing in. But for me, I can always tell someone on my team who's continuing to sharpen the saw and to seek out professional development. And it's those people who learn today and have the tools that they need tomorrow. And that's a very foundational concept. And then the last thing is just learning how best to collaborate and to work across teams. When you start off early in your career, if you're fortunate to be in an organization that has other junior people at your level, building relationships and identifying each other's strengths and weaknesses and figuring out how to work together to help the organization solve problems instead of being the disruptive person who tries to work in an isolated environment and not on a team-based approach. I'm an introvert by nature. I prefer to be alone and to do my own thing, and that's how I recharge. But after I get recharged, I am the first one to get in with the team and to work together to help solve problems. And I think that not enough people learn that skill set of working together, which is why people tend to hire former athletes or former military people who have learned that skill of working together. I think understanding those and being patient and taking each step as a learning opportunity would help someone rise up and hopefully one day either be the CFO or whatever it is that you aspire to be for your career trajectory.
Well, I think our listeners have gotten a ton of great value out of this conversation and some wonderful guidance and tips. I want to thank you for the great conversation and our listeners for tuning in to On Record PR. I want to let them know to visit our website, onrecordpr.com, subscribe to the podcast, share it with others, and check out the show notes. And as always, we welcome guests and topic ideas sent to podcast@onrecordpr.com. And William, we will see you next time, and hopefully I'll get an invitation to that 75th anniversary party.
It sounds like you'd be a welcomed guest. So I invite me and Milton invite you to join us.
There you go. I look forward to chatting again soon.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson-Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Gina Rubel Communications. This episode is edited by Željko Tomic of Compost Media Flow.